Mama Whiteside, I saw you coming from my house next door. I was born Emily Kerner in 1881 in the Kerner house on Monroe Street, the only house in Gretna that is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. My grandfather came from Germany in 1820, and he was a pioneer in McDonoughville. My dad and my grandpa were both butchers, and they did very well, so we were privileged. We had beautiful clothes and hats and chauffeured coaches and even owned racehorses. In 1905, I bought the land that the red maple sits on with my own money. I was furious because I had to get legal permission from my husband, George Trout, in order to buy that property. George and I had 2 sons together, and all of my grandchildren carry the Trout name. Our marriage didn't work out really well, so we had a scandalous divorce, which was, unusual to be divorced in that day and age. But anyway, George went on and he remarried, and he had a son, and you visited him tonight, Leicester Trout. He was the king of Grella, which was big. But anyway, I married Sydney Whiteside. I'm so cold. Sydney Whiteside, who was the love of my life. He was a gambler and also a deputy under the powerful Sheriff Louis Marrero. So we had political connections as well. Sydney and I had 1 son, Sydney Jr., who was a handful, always in trouble. When he was 16, he managed to get his ear completely severed. The two New Orleans newspapers said it was an accident, an automobile accident. But the people around here all thought I got really mad at him and I'd cut off his ear. Well, unlike good wine, Sydney didn't age well. He got into more trouble, and when he was a good bit older, there was an incident where he was charged as an accomplice in a robbery and holdup at the casino that my cousin owned, Southport Casino that my cousin owned. I hocked some of my good jewelry to get him out of jail. It was $25,000, which was a fortune in 1932. Of course, it went to trial, and he was found not guilty. About that time, I had some trouble of my own. I was charged with assault and battery and lying in wait with a dangerous weapon. They said I held my neighbor, Mrs. Brightman, hostage for 6 hours in her house with my shotgun. They just wouldn't listen. I told them I did not go in her house. I just held my gun on the sidewalk. Well, Sheriff Marrero passed on the word to Ms. Brightman that he couldn't do anything to help her. And when, ended up that, of course, all the charges were dropped. So it wasn't an issue. The Brightmans moved shortly after, so that took care of that. Everything was pretty much okay. Pretty much. And Sydney and I had a mess of a marriage. We would have public spectacles where we'd fight on the street. We didn't care what the police thought, and we didn't care what people thought. We just went about our business, did what we needed to do. Well, he trained horses and owned horses at the suburban racetrack, which was located across from the McDonough Cemetery. And things were going really well. Even when they abolished gambling in 1908, we continued doing really well until 1914, when our beautiful home burned to the ground. That's when I found out that Sidney, the love of my life, had liens against my property for his debts. So I had to deal with that, and I had to deal with the insurance company from the fire, and I fought them for 4 years all the way to the Supreme Court. So finally, in 1918, we had good news and bad. The good news was that the insurance company finally paid off. The bad news was that my poor Sidney died at just 42. Things were really tough then. Money was really hard then. And the city came along and decided that they were going to pave the sidewalks, and they sent me a bill. I was really very upset about that. I paid the bill because they made me, but I decided that it was my sidewalk and that just anybody wasn't able to walk on it. Well, rumor has it that a man was shot in the foot with a shotgun on my very own sidewalk. Things were just bad. I mean, the money was kind of bad. I couldn't pay the light bill. It was $6, and the lineman came from Algiers Electric. He climbed up on the pole. I got the shotgun out. He saw the shotgun. He changed his mind and he left. So things would work out when they had to. In 1933, I bought the Tiny Inn, which was located across from where the Wabbit is today. And things were going well, and then the city came along and decided that they needed the land to build a power station. So I bought property on the corner of 5th and Stump Boulevard from that old Senator Alvin Stump, who bragged about that he was going to get his property back when I went broke. And I fooled him, because I ended up doing very, very well indeed. I built Whitesides. It was known for its good food and its cleanliness. It was a Gretna family favorite restaurant. We hosted many business and social events in the large banquet room. It was hard work. We were open 24 hours a day. Family business. My 3 sons, their wives, my 3 grandchildren, all worked together to make it work. We even had a small stand behind Gretna High School where we sold sandwiches to students at lunch. I would cook that gravy on a wood stove to sell 15-cent roast beef po' boys. Today, I'm back with my family, with Sidney, the love of my life, no matter what he did, and my 3 sons. I died in 1962, and since I own this tomb, I made arrangements before I died that the tomb would be sealed after my burial. So my daughter-in-laws weren't invited to be with us, and they're resting peacefully over at West Lawn. And then, if you knew anything about me, you knew that I had the big red maple tree in my backyard. But I also had beautiful, beautiful flowers because I loved to garden, and I would spend a lot of money on bulbs for that garden. And then I had these neighbors, the Browns. And that would be the ancestors of Jackie Berthelot. Was the Brown family. His mama was Joyce Brown Berthelot. But anyway, the Browns lived next door, and they had cows. And I told them over and over and over to keep the cows out of my yard and out of my flowers. And they just wouldn't listen, so I shot the cow. I mean, I just wanted them to listen. I didn't want to shoot the cow. You know, I hated it when people just didn't listen. But I hope you listen and come back next year and see some more characters that help develop the history of Gretna. Thank you.
And this is Miss Helen Williams, one of our favorites. She has to be here every year for sure. Board member, she's a board member of the Gretna Historical Society, and this is her 8th time as an actor. And she does a wonderful job. Thank you so much. She's also on Facebook if you want to follow her.